Good morning, students. This is Anjali. Today's our topic is data visualization, line graphs. In last class, we have seen that data visualization using the box plot. So we will recall our box plot. In last class, actually, we have seen that how to create the box plot and on what basis we have to draw the box plot. Definitely, you know that how to create the box plot. Just you have to take the sum axis and by using the sum data, you have to plot that box plot. So, in the box plot, there are generally 4 quartiles. It will contain the sum 4 quartile. And that 4 quartile is containing upper quartile, or we can say upper whisker, lower quartile, then median, minimum. So every part of the box plot is very essential. So here again, whenever you have to draw the box plot, at that time you have to find out the median of the data. When you will find out the median of the data, so on that basis you can draw your box plot. For example, just this is your box plot. This is your box plot. So here what is happening, you are finding out the median and on that median you are drawing this box plot. Again, this box plot can contain some outliers also. That outlier means that data is not so much useful, not so useful. So we can avoid that data. So this is all about the box plot. Now we will start our main topic, data visualization using the line graph. Line chart. What type of analysis do line charts support? What type of analysis do line charts support? Then when and how to use line charts for visual analysis and types of the line graphs. These are our contents. So we will see one by one. First, what is line chart? Definitely, till now we have seen that scatter plot, box plot, both are very useful for data visualization. When you are using some image criteria, so at that time it is very easy to understand that data, to analyze any data. So here we are using the line chart. Actually, line graph is a chart that displays a series of data points connected by line segment. Here we will use only line segment, and that line segment, that data points are representing, that data points are connecting by line segments, and by using this series, we are using the line graph. And line graphs can be used to show how data changes over time and often used to communicate trends such as how household income changes each year. We know that we can use the different data for the line graphs. Just we have given the one of the example, that is household income. On the basis of household income, we can draw the line chart. For example, the x-axis can display the continuous or discrete data, such as we can say that days, years, or categories. And y-axis is typically continuous variable, but can also be discrete. Actually, x-axis is containing continuous data and y-axis is containing continuous variable. But this continuous variable can be discrete, and line graph can also be used to compare the multiple trend lines, whereas bar charts can only represent only one trend line. If you are using the line graph, so at that time you can use multiple lines. But if you are using the bar chart, at that time you can't use the multiple lines. You have to use only one trend line. Now, how do we read a line chart? For most line chart, the horizontal axis represents the dimension of the time. This is very important for our line chart. And while the vertical axis represents the quantitative value, and this quantitative value can be money, number of people, percent change, and the graph should have each axis or horizontal and vertical lines framing the chart and label. The line chart can display generally both single or many lines on the chart. The use of the single line or many line depends on the type of analysis the chart should support. So, which type of graph you have to use? Single line you have to use or multiple lines you have to use? So, this data, this type of chart it's totally depends on what type of data you are using. And a line chart with many lines allows for comparisons between the categories within the chosen field. So definitely this comparison is allowed. It is possible only when we are using the different categories. So at that time we can use the line chart, and with the single line, the shape and direction of the line provides the means to identify the changes and trends within the data. So if you are using the single line, so at that time the shape and the direction will provide some identity changes, and that changes are available in the data only. So both type of graph are very useful. You can use the multiple lines also, and you can use the single line also. And the line rising in height as it moves from left to right side of the chart, that indicating an increasing trend. So definitely if your line is rising, that means height is rising like that. So definitely it is showing that your trend is increasing, and opposite the line decreasing the height, it indicates that the line has a downward trend. And if the height of the line is decreasing, so at that time we can consider your trend is in the downward direction. And many lines allow for comparison across the different members within the same field as well as where the lines intersect. So when a field has several members, different colors are often used to make possible to distinguish between the members on the chart. So it is very important to remember that charts with fewer lines are easier to read. Definitely, just imagine you have drawn so many lines on single graph. So it is very difficult to understand. But if you have used only few lines, so it is very easy to read. So be thoughtful when choosing the type of the chart to best represent your data. Too many categories will clutter the line chart and make it harder to understand. So what type of analysis do line charts support? Actually, the line charts monitoring behavior in the set of the data. We are using different type of data, different set of the data, and these charts generally used for more than tracking change over the time. And they also help highlight differences and correlations within your data. If you are using the line chart, so at the time it is used for tracking the change over time. It will help highlight some differences or some relations within your data. And furthermore, a line chart can help a viewer make predictions about what might happen next. Just take a line chart tracking seasonally in the US real estate market. Just we have to take as an example. And the reader could use this information for investigating the different aspects which are using for preparation for buying a home. And they could try to find the best time to buy or sell home, or how a recession could impact housing availability. So here we have to just imagine the we have to track the seasonally in the US real estate market. We have to investigate different aspects which are useful for buying a home, and then we have to find the best time to buy or sell home, or how a recession could impact housing availability. So consider the stock market as another example, and they often use line chart for supporting buying and selling the decisions. And generally line charts can show some changes in the values for particular stock at different intervals of the time, and for if different interval of the time from yearly to minute by minute. Even though the market is somewhat unpredictable, brokers are able to use line charts to help make determinations, and they can see whether the stock is likely to continue on an upward or downward trend. Their ability to predict what will happen is aided in part by human ability to infer directionality from the lines in the chart. And generally this chart type is a very powerful tool for identifying the patterns and the trend. Now, when and how to use line charts for visual analysis. Till now we have used scatter plot and then box plot, but now we are using the line chart. Generally data that is measured in continuous progression works well in a line chart format. And if your organization wants to track your data, track the behavior of the data over a given period, then line chart is very useful. And your audience will see some changes in your data, then plotted out with a line connecting each data point as they changed over time. The horizontal line should focus on measurement with regularly occurring intervals. Usually, the horizontal line defines the length of the time, but it can also focus on another from measurement as well, so long as it meets the requirement. So first, for example, iteration of an experiment, pitches in a baseball games. Use color to identify deviation from the average or target goal, or to define an individual member within the measure category. So if you want to analyze some visualization, so you can use the different colors, and you can use that different colors in your graph. By using different colors, you can consider particular data. You can read the particular data within your measured category. You can identify the different patterns also. So if you have some outliers in your data set, the use of color can be a good way to make them stand out. So for example, if there is an outlier available in your data set, then definitely you can show it as by using the colors. And when you are using the color for showing the outlier, so anybody can observe that as it is a outliers. So additionally, the line charts do not require a zero baseline. This means it can be included or excluded depending on what the creator of the chart believes best tells the story within the data. So there is no need to take the zero baseline also. That means it's totally depends on the creator of the chart. So if the creator of the charts want to add the zero baseline, so they can. Otherwise, it's not necessary that to add a zero baseline. And the goal of the effective line chart is to emphasize some changes and direction in your chart and not display the size of the values themselves. So if there are too many lines or colors on a chart, the visualization becomes confusing and difficult to read also. So definitely if you are using so many lines, multiple colors and on the same chart, so it is very difficult to read also, and your chart will become confusing. So make sure that you have to use only few lines and few colors, so it will be very easy to to read and understand for the users. So when deciding what chart type to use, remember that line chart can help user answer questions like the following. So for example, first, what patterns appear in the data over time? Whenever you will observe the data, so at that time you have to consider some patterns. You have to imagine some patterns. Then second one is the data in upward trend or a downward trend? Now you have to check the height of the data is increasing or decreasing. If the height of the data is increasing, that means it's going upward. That means it is using the upward trend. And if the height of data is getting down, getting decreased, so at that time your data is moving towards the downward. That means it is using the downward trend. Then third one is one category performing better than other sets of the data? Now again you have to check different categories. So at that time, which data set is performing better? So here you have to compare, and after that you have to draw your line chart. Then next one is, are we likely to meet our quarterly goal? Even here you have to check whether you have met your goal or not. So first you have to check for the pattern. Then you have to check for the trend. That means it should be upward or downward. Then after that you have to check category performance, and after that you have to check your goal. So you have to go one by one. Now let's see one of the example of the line chart. This is your line chart. There is a y-axis and this is your x-axis. And this line chart follows the number of borrowers measured every month over the course of the several years. And the x-axis represent the date field. This is showing your date field. And the y-axis represent the quantitative field. This is your quantitative field. The first and the last points are labeled for the context. The labels for each data point are not displayed to reduce the clutter. Axis and right grid lines are visible to the viewer to help in identifying the locations of the data points. Now, when to use the line chart? Generally, line graphs are very useful in that they show data variables and trends very clearly and can help to make the predictions about the result of data not yet recorded. So here you have to check for data variables and trends, which data variables you are using and what type of trends is occurring. And then you have to make some predictions also for your result. And if seeing the trend of your data is the goal, then this is the chart to use. And line chart show time series relationships using the continuous data. They allow a quick assessment of acceleration, like we can say that lines curving upward and deceleration line curving downward. And we can see again volatility also. That means its frequency should be up and down. And they are excellent for tracking the multiple data sets on the same chart to see any correlation in the trends. Now they can also be used to display several dependent variables against one independent variable. Some experts recommend no more than 4 lines on a single graph. We agree with that, the recommendation. Definitely, if more than 4 lines you are using on the single graph, so it will be very confusing state, and it will be very difficult to read that data. And any more than that, and the line chart becomes difficult to interpret. So make sure you should not use the more than 4 lines. You can use the less than 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will be very easy to understand. It will be very easy to read also. We can interpret our data. But if you are using the more than 4 lines, so it will be very difficult to interpret your data. So example uses of the line chart. The line charts are great visualizations to see how a metric changes over time. Now, for example, the exchange rate for GBP to USD. Another use of line chart is comparing two or more series of data over time. Again, for example, difference in median household income between California and the rest of the United States. Now, this is the anatomy of the line chart. This is your y-axis and this is your x-axis. This is your series. According to series, so 0, it's reaching to 1.6, then below 1.5. So this is your series. Now the line chart consists of the x-axis and the y-axis, and x-axis values are defined the number or date time values. Then y-axis value must be numbers and can be said to be interpreted as decimal, percent and currency. This widget supports more than one series of data, with each series corresponding to a unique line in the chart. So how axis labels display on the line chart? Generally, we have designed the labels on the line charts to automatically respond to the size of the widget on your dashboard to make them clear to read and understand. So definitely you are using the line chart for responding to the user and for making the data very clear to read and understand. That means the number of data point label displayed on your x-axis and y-axis increase for wider and taller widgets and decrease for narrower and shorter widgets. So however, over the data points between labels will still reveal the values hidden from the view. And due to the way we calculate the frequency of labels in relation to the widget size, it's not possible to set your own intervals for labels. Now, for example, for longer date spans, a wider widget will try to fit in as many date labels as possible. In this animated example, we start with a date label for every second day. As the widget is reduced the size, it switches to quickly date labels until at its innest width, it switches to a single month label. So given the available width of the widget, even when it's full width of the dashboard, it displays the labels weekly to give a best and a neat fit. So here you can see that this is your data. These are your page views. So you can see that this width is becoming less, and again after some time it will increase. So here also your data is a date label is generally it's going less than according to your day. So there are different types of the graph. First type is simple line graph. Only one line is plotted on the graph. Then multiple line graph. More than one line is plotted on the same set of axes. Multiple line graph can effectively compare similar items over the same period of the time. So if you are using the simple line, then it's okay. Then there is no problem. But when you are using the multiple line, so at that time sometimes we can get the confused, but you are using the limited multiple line. So at that time we can compare the data with the similar items over the same period of the time. Then next one, compound line graph. If information can be subdivided into two or more type of data, so at that time we can use the compound line graph, and this type of graph is called compound line graph, and the lines are drawn to show the component part of the total, and the top line shows the total and line below shows the part of the total, and the distance between every two lines shows the size of each part. Then vertical line graph. This is the vertical line graph. Vertical line graph are graph in which a vertical line extends from each data point down to the horizontal axis. This is your vertical line. And vertical line graph sometimes we can call column graph, and the line parallel to the y-axis is called vertical line. This is your x-axis, y-axis, and another, we will draw the another vertical line which is totally parallel to the y-axis. So it is a vertical line. Then next one, horizontal line graph. Horizontal line graph, a graph which is a horizontal line extending from each data point parallel to the earth. Parallel to the earth, that means it is a x-axis. It will be parallel to the x-axis. And horizontal line graph, sometimes also called a row graph, and a line parallel to the x-axis is called a vertical line. So straight line graph, line graph is a graph formed by the segments of straight lines that join the plotted points that represent given data. The line graph is used to solve the changing conditions, often over a certain time interval. The general linear function has the form like y is equal to mx plus c, where your m and c both are the constant, and the fundamental rule at the rear of sketching a linear graph is we require only 2 points to graph the straight line. The subsequent procedure is followed in drawing line graph by substituting two similar values for x in the equation y is equal to mx plus c, and we have two values for y. Thus we will get the 2 points x1 y1 and x2 y2 on the line. So plot the horizontal line and vertical line, and then after that you have to select the suitable scale for both the axes. If given table values are large, then you have to choose the scale for the particular value, and that means it will totally depends on the given values what type of data you are using, and plot the 2 points in the Cartesian plane on the paper. Join the 2 points using a line segment and extend to two directions. The closed figure obtained is the required linear graph. Then there are different parts of the line graph. First one is a title. That means title explain the what graph is to be plotted. Then scale. The scale is showing that it is a totally numbers. That means it will explain the units which are utilized on the linear graph. Then next one is the labels. Both side and the bottom of the linear graph have label that indicate what kind of data is represented in the graph. Then x-axis describe the data points on the line, and the y-axis shows the numeric value for each point on the line. Then bars, they measure the data number, and then data values, they are actual numbers for each data point. Then line graphs and types of the data. For line graph, generally the variable on the x-axis defines the time, and the software tools store generally this variable as a continuous variable. First is a continuous data. That continuous data, that means it is appropriate for the line graph. The line graph generally make the sense for the continuous data on the y-axis. Since continuous data are measured on the scale with many possible values, and some examples of the continuous data are generally we can consider the age, blood pressure, weight, temperature, speed. And for all these examples, line graph is very appropriate, very perfect graphical tool to visualize the changes in the variable over the time. Then categorical or nominal data. Line graphs do not make sense for categorical or nominal data on y-axis, since these types of data are measured on scale with specific values. With the categorical data, the sample is divided into the groups, and the responses might have a defined order. For example, in a survey, you are asked to give your opinion on scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So your responses are categorical. So your response is not consistent. Your response can change according to category. For nominal data, the sample is also divided into the groups, but there is no particular order. So country of residence is an example of the nominal variable, and you can use the country abbreviations, or you can use the numbers to code the country name. Either way, you are simply naming the different group of the data. So this is all about the line graphs. These are your references, so you can go through these references. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. hit the bell icon for more updates.